Jessica, you really thought a new address would make me forget you? The voice came from 20 feet down the polished hallway, just as Jessica Monroe slid her key into apartment 12C, and every muscle in her body locked. 3 hours earlier, the 29-year-old waitress had carried the last box into her new one-bedroom and promised herself she would never again let one cruel coworker decide how small she was allowed to feel. Now Kyle Mercer, the bartender from the downtown steakhouse where she worked double shifts, was walking toward her with the same smile he wore whenever he mocked her size, stole her best tables, or told the staff she was too slow for a busy room. Jessica was plus size, soft around the middle and broad through the hips. But what hurt was never her body. It was how easily people used it as permission to underestimate her. She had spent 6 months saving tips for this apartment, 12 miles from work, because Kyle's teasing had become midnight texts, unwanted rides home, and a habit of appearing where she never remembered telling him she would be. She reported him once. Her manager called it a personality clash, so Jessica stopped explaining and moved. Still wearing her white server blouse after a 10-hour shift, she clutched a trash bag in one hand and held the brass lock with the other. "How did you get this address?" she asked. Kyle shrugged. People talk. What Jessica did not see was the open door across the hall or the man standing inside it. Dante Moretti, 37, was a billionaire real estate investor in public and a mafia boss in the world that mattered after midnight, a man criminals feared, allies respected, and enemies learned not to test. He had money, armed loyalty, and enough influence to silence a room with one look. But 5 years after betrayal cost him his younger brother. He trusted power far more than affection. He was removing his cufflinks when Jessica's frightened question reached him, and when he looked out, he saw Kyle advancing, Jessica backing against 12C, and something that bothered him more than fear: embarrassment. She looked as if she believed she owed the hallway an apology for being cornered in it. "I don't want trouble," Jessica said, steadying her voice. "I just want you to leave." Kyle glanced at the grocery tote near her feet and laughed. "You move into a place like this and suddenly you're too good to answer me? Come on, Jess. You should be grateful somebody notices you." The words touched an old wound, but Jessica lifted her chin. At work, she was the woman who remembered an elderly customer's allergy, covered shifts for single mothers, and slipped her own dinner to the dishwasher when his paycheck was late. "Being noticed by someone who doesn't respect me isn't a compliment," she said. Dante's hand stopped on the doorframe. That answer changed the way he looked at her. She was scared, but she was not surrendering. Kyle stepped closer, and Jessica moved between him and the half-open door, protecting the apartment she had barely begun to call home. Then a small cardboard box beside her split open, spilling receipts, a cheap picture frame, and an envelope stamped "Final Notice" across the marble floor. Jessica crouched immediately, cheeks burning, because Kyle was grinning. "New apartment, same broke, Jessica," he said. "You really think people like you get fresh starts?" Before she could answer, polished black shoes stopped beside the scattered papers. Dante bent, picked up the envelope without reading it, placed it face down inside the box, and handed Jessica the picture frame with such deliberate care that she forgot to breathe. Only then did Kyle recognize him. Mr. Moretti. Dante did not look at him. His dark eyes stayed on Jessica. "Is he welcome here?" Jessica shook her head. Dante straightened and stepped between them, broad shoulders blocking Kyle's path. "Then he leaves." Kyle's smile vanished. Dante's voice dropped. "Tell me how you found her address." Jessica froze when Kyle's face went pale. Kyle's face lost its color so quickly that Jessica noticed before she understood why. "I asked you a question," Dante Moretti said, still standing between them. His tone never rose, yet the entire hallway seemed to tighten around it. Kyle glanced toward the elevator. "She told people at work she was moving." "I told them I was moving," Jessica corrected. "I never gave anyone the address." Dante finally looked at Kyle, and something in that look stripped away the bartender's confidence. "Then try again." Kyle swallowed. "Maybe I saw it on some paperwork." Jessica's stomach dropped. 2 weeks earlier, management had asked every employee to update emergency contact information and mailing addresses before payroll switched systems. She had filled out the form in the office during her break. Kyle had been behind the bar that night. "You went through my employee file?" she whispered. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." Dante reached into his pocket, removed his phone, and made one call. Marco, 12th floor, now. Less than a minute later, a broad-shouldered man in a charcoal suit stepped from the elevator. Kyle stared at him, then at Dante, suddenly understanding that the expensive apartment, the silent authority, and the name Moretti were not coincidences. Dante gave one simple instruction: escort Mr. Mercer downstairs, get his license plate. Building security is not to let him past the lobby again. Kyle forced a laugh. "You can't ban me because she's being dramatic." Jessica flinched, but Dante's expression did not change. "This building belongs to one of my companies." The laugh died. "So yes," Dante continued, "I can." Kyle looked at Jessica as if expecting her to apologize for him. She didn't. For the first time in months, she held his gaze without lowering hers. "Don't come to my home again." Marco guided Kyle toward the elevator without touching him, and Kyle went willingly, but just before the doors closed, he called back, "You don't know what you're getting involved in, Jess." Dante watched the elevator numbers descend. Jessica watched Dante. "Who exactly are you?" she asked. "Your neighbor tonight." That isn't an answer. One corner of his mouth almost moved. Almost. "No, it isn't." Jessica crouched to gather the rest of her belongings, refusing to let a stranger, powerful or not, turn her into someone waiting to be rescued. Dante crouched too. "I can do that myself," she said. "I know." But he still picked up the groceries that had rolled beneath the console table and placed them carefully into her tote. No commands. No questions. When he found a cracked jar of pasta sauce leaking through the bag, he removed it before it stained her blouse. Jessica stared at him. Men who looked like Dante Moretti usually expected the room to rearrange itself around them. This one was kneeling on polished marble holding a broken jar. "Thank you," she said quietly. Dante stood. "Has he followed you before?" Jessica hesitated. Trusting people had become expensive. "Sometimes he'd be outside after my shifts. Sometimes he'd text me things I never told him." Dante's jaw tightened. "Did he ever threaten you?" "Not directly." She hated how small that sounded. Everyone kept saying he was just annoying. Annoying doesn't make a woman move 12 miles away. Jessica looked up sharply. He had noticed. Not her body. Not the overdue notice. The cost of what she had done to feel safe. "You believe me?" she asked. Dante's eyes hardened, but not at her. "I believe patterns." A soft chime came from his phone. Marco had sent a security camera image from the lobby taken 40 minutes earlier. Kyle had not entered alone. A second man had held the door for him, then walked away before the camera caught his face clearly. Dante enlarged the frame. Jessica leaned closer, their shoulders nearly touching. Then she stopped breathing. On the stranger's wrist was a silver watch with a bright blue face. She had seen that watch every night for nearly a year. "That's impossible," she whispered. Dante turned toward her. "You know him?" Jessica stared at the frozen image. "That watch belongs to my manager." Jessica stared at the security image until the blue watch seemed brighter than everything around it. "His name is Raymond Cole," she said. "He manages the restaurant." Dante's eyes remained on the screen. "The same man who dismissed your complaint about Kyle?" Jessica nodded slowly. A colder possibility began forming in her mind. "Raymond kept telling me I was imagining things. He said Kyle joked with everyone." Dante locked his phone. "Men like that survive because they convince everyone else the victim is difficult." Jessica looked at him. There was no pity in his voice, only recognition, and somehow that felt safer. "I have to work tomorrow," she said. Dante's expression hardened. "No." Her back straightened immediately. "You don't get to decide that." For the first time that night, Dante seemed surprised. "I wasn't ordering you." It sounded like an order. "I'm told that happens." Despite everything, Jessica almost smiled. Dante lowered his voice. "Go if you choose, but don't go alone. I can't afford to lose my job." "Then you won't. You can't promise that." Dante looked toward the elevator doors Kyle had disappeared behind. "I rarely promise what I can't control." At 10:15 the next morning, Jessica walked into the restaurant wearing her black apron, comfortable shoes, and the same determination that had carried her through double shifts and bad months. Dante entered 30 seconds behind her in a dark suit, not close enough to embarrass her, but close enough that she knew she wasn't alone. Conversations died across the dining room. Jessica had expected staring because of Dante. Instead, she saw Kyle behind the bar, already working. Her stomach tightened. "Why is he here?" she asked. Raymond appeared from his office before Kyle could answer. He was 50, polished, silver-haired, with the practiced smile of a man who spent years making cruelty sound professional. The blue-faced watch gleamed on his wrist. "Jessica," he said. "Office, now." Dante took one step forward. Jessica touched his sleeve. "Let me." He looked down at her hand, then at her face, and stopped. That mattered more than if he had barged through the door for her. Inside Raymond's office, Kyle followed and closed the door. Jessica remained standing. "Sit," Raymond said. "I'd rather stand." His smile disappeared. He placed a printed document on the desk. 3 customers reported unauthorized charges connected to tables you served last week. Corporate is investigating. Jessica stared at the page. "That's not possible. Your employee number appears on every transaction." Kyle leaned against the wall, pretending sympathy. "Bad timing after moving into an expensive apartment." Jessica turned on him. "You did this." Raymond folded his hands. "This is exactly the behavior I warned you about. Accusations, drama, paranoia." The words landed with terrible precision. He had been building this story about her long before today. "You gave Kyle my address," Jessica said. Raymond's eyes flicked toward his watch for half a second. "Enough. I have no idea what you're talking about." He slid another paper forward. "Sign your resignation, and we won't involve law enforcement." Jessica's fingers trembled, but she did not reach for the pen. "No." Raymond blinked. "Excuse me? If I resign, it looks like I'm admitting I stole. Think carefully." "I am." Kyle stepped closer. "Jess, don't make this worse." The office door opened. Dante stood there, calm enough to make Raymond nervous. She said no. Raymond rose. "This is an employee matter." "Not anymore." Dante placed his phone on the desk. On the screen was footage Marco had obtained from the building's lobby. Raymond letting Kyle inside Jessica's apartment building the previous night. Raymond's face tightened. "That proves nothing." "Correct," Dante said. So I looked further. Jessica turned toward him. Dante tapped the screen again. A photograph appeared showing Kyle at an ATM 3 nights earlier, holding several restaurant gift cards. 3 stolen customer payments were converted into cards after closing, Dante said. Kyle's face drained. Raymond snapped, "You had no right to investigate my business." "Your business?" Dante's voice became dangerously quiet. Interesting choice of words. Jessica noticed Raymond's hand drifting toward a desk drawer. Dante noticed too. He stepped between Jessica and the desk without touching her, turning his body into a barrier. Raymond froze. Then Jessica's phone vibrated. Unknown number. She opened the message. It contained a photograph taken through her apartment window the previous night. Beneath it were 7 words. "You should have signed the paper, Jessica." She looked up, blood cold. Dante read the message over her shoulder. "Kyle was with us downstairs when this was taken," Jessica whispered. Dante's eyes shifted from Kyle to Raymond. "Then there's someone else." Jessica stared at the photograph on her phone until the edges blurred. Someone had stood outside her apartment after midnight, close enough to photograph her through the living room window while she unpacked. Dante took the phone gently from her shaking hand, studied the angle, then called Marco. "Pull every camera covering 12C from midnight to 2 a.m., include service corridors." Raymond pushed away from his desk. "You're turning a workplace dispute into something ridiculous." Jessica looked at him. "Someone photographed me inside my home. Maybe Kyle took it earlier." "Kyle was downstairs with us," Dante said. Raymond's mouth closed. 10 minutes later, Dante escorted Jessica from the restaurant, but when he opened the passenger door of his black SUV, she stopped. "Wait, what?" "My locker." She hurried back inside before anyone could stop her. Dante followed, keeping several feet behind because she had already made one thing clear. Protection did not mean taking away her choices. Jessica opened the narrow employee locker and pulled out a battered spiral notebook. "I write down every table," she explained. "Tips, split checks, complaints. I started doing it because Raymond blamed servers whenever numbers didn't match." Dante flipped through several pages. Dates, table numbers, payment amounts, small handwritten notes. Jessica pointed to 3 entries from the previous week. "These are the customers they accused me of stealing from." Her finger moved down the page. "But look, All 3 checks were reopened after I clocked out. Dante's expression changed. Who can reopen closed checks? Managers. Jessica turned another page, then froze. She had written a note 6 weeks earlier. Raymond override. Kyle took card to office. I thought it was strange, she whispered. I didn't know it mattered. Dante looked back toward Raymond's office. It matters. At Jessica's apartment building 20 minutes later, Marco was waiting in the lobby with security footage ready. The 3 of them watched a figure enter the 12th floor service hallway at 12:43 a.m., avoiding the main cameras. The man wore a maintenance jacket and baseball cap, but when he turned near the stairwell, Jessica gasped. It wasn't Raymond. It wasn't Kyle. That's Victor Hale, she said. Dante's gaze sharpened. Who? The restaurant's accountant. He comes in every Thursday after closing. Marco immediately searched the name, then his face hardened. Boss, Hale isn't just an accountant. He turned the screen toward Dante. Victor Hale had worked years earlier for a financial company connected to one of Dan's longtime rivals. Jessica looked between them. What does that mean? Dante was silent for a moment too long. It means Kyle may have been the distraction. They rode upstairs. Jessica's apartment door was still locked, but inside something felt wrong. Her boxes were exactly where she left them, her clothes untouched, her television still there. Then she saw the cardboard box from the hallway sitting open on the kitchen counter. Someone had searched it. Jessica rushed forward. My notebook. You have it, Dante said. Not that one. She pulled aside envelopes and photographs. I had an old receipt book in here, from work. I brought it home by accident months ago when Raymond told us to throw out outdated records. She stared at the empty box. I kept it because there were customer phone numbers on some receipts, and I didn't want them going into the trash. Dante's eyes narrowed. What else was written in it? Jessica thought back. Then her face changed. Handwritten account numbers. Raymond used to write codes across the backs of receipts before entering them into his computer. Marco swore under his breath. Dante understood first. Jessica had unknowingly taken evidence of a money-moving operation, and someone had spent months making her look unreliable before they searched her home for it. Kyle's harassment had never been random. They wanted everyone to think I was paranoid, Jessica whispered. Her composure finally cracked, and I almost believed them. Dante stepped closer but stopped before touching her. Jessica! She wiped angrily at a tear. I moved 12 miles. I changed my routine. I kept thinking maybe I was overreacting. Look at me. She did. Dante's voice became softer than she had ever heard it. You were paying attention when everyone else benefited from you staying quiet. He removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders, not because she was cold, but because she was trembling. Jessica gripped the lapels and breathed. Then Marco's phone chimed. He opened a newly recovered camera clip from the service hallway. Victor Hale entered Jessica's apartment at 12:51 a.m., but 4 minutes later another man appeared behind him. Dante went completely still. Jessica looked at the screen, then at Dante. You know him. Dante's jaw tightened. He works for me. Dante did not move for several seconds. On Marco's phone, the second man in the hallway paused beneath the security camera just long enough for his face to become clear. Samuel Rizzo, Dante said. Marco's expression darkened. He's been handling building security for us for 8 years. Jessica tightened Dante's jacket around her shoulders. Then Victor knew exactly which cameras to avoid because someone inside your organization told him. Dante nodded once, but the betrayal behind his calm was unmistakable. 5 years ago, trusting the wrong man had cost him his brother. Now another trusted man had helped someone enter Jessica's home. Find Rizzo, Dante told Marco, quietly. Marco started toward the door, but Jessica caught something on the recovered footage. Wait, go back. Marco rewound several seconds. Victor left Jessica's apartment carrying nothing. Samuel entered 4 minutes later, stayed less than 90 seconds, and emerged holding a small black object. Zoom in, Jessica said. The image sharpened enough to reveal a rectangular receipt book wrapped in a rubber band. That's it. Dante's eyes narrowed. So Samuel has the evidence. Jessica shook her head. Maybe not all of it. She rushed to the kitchen, opened her purse, and pulled out the spiral notebook she had saved from her work locker. Raymond's override codes are here. And if the old receipt book has his handwritten account numbers, these dates can connect them. Marco's phone rang. He answered, listened, then looked at Dante. Rizzo is at the Moretti Foundation Hotel downtown. Private ballroom. Victor Hale and Raymond Cole are both there. Dante's expression turned lethal. Why? Your charity acquisition closes tonight. The final transfer is scheduled for midnight. Jessica stared at him. Acquisition? Dante took his phone from Marco and opened a file. The hotel hosting his foundation gala was being purchased through several holding companies. One of the consulting firms involved had been processing payments through businesses across the city, including Jessica's restaurant. Victor and Raymond had not simply been skimming customer accounts. They had been moving stolen funds through Dante's transaction network, hoping the money would look like part of his organization. If the transfer completed at midnight, the paper trail could point directly at him. They weren't trying to hide from you, Jessica said slowly. They were trying to make it look like you were behind it. Dante looked at her, impressed despite the danger. Exactly. And when I accidentally took the receipt book, they needed it back before tonight. Which is why Kyle kept watching you, Marco added. Jessica's fear hardened into anger. Months of humiliation, whispers, false accusations, and unwanted appearances had all served one purpose: make her doubt herself long enough for powerful men to use her. Then we go to the hotel. Dante immediately said, You don't. Jessica met his eyes. Those are my notes. I know Raymond's handwriting. I know the restaurant records. If you walk into that room alone, they'll say everything was fabricated by a mafia boss protecting himself. Jessica, you told me protection doesn't mean I lose my choices. Dante went silent. She had used his own promise against him, and instead of anger, something almost proud appeared in his eyes. You stay beside me, he said, not behind me. 40 minutes later, the Moretti Foundation ballroom glittered beneath crystal chandeliers while donors, attorneys, and executives gathered for the midnight signing. Jessica entered beside Dante in the same simple black work pants and white blouse she had worn at the restaurant. She had refused his offer to stop for new clothes. I'm not changing who I am to tell the truth, she had said. Dante had looked at her for a long moment before replying, Good. Conversations faded as they crossed the room together. Raymond stood near the signing table. Victor Hale was beside him. Samuel Rizzo guarded the far exit. Kyle was nowhere in sight. Dante stopped before the assembled board and placed Jessica's notebook on the table. The transfer is suspended, Victor smiled tightly. On what grounds? Jessica stepped forward before Dante could answer. Mine. Raymond laughed. She's a waitress with a personal grudge. Jessica opened the notebook. Table 41, March 8th. Manager override at 10:43 p.m. Table 16, March 15th. Same override code. Table 22, March 21st. Same pattern. She looked directly at Raymond. Every customer you accused me of stealing from had their payment reopened after my shift ended. Raymond's smile disappeared. Victor reached for his phone. Dante's men quietly sealed the exits. And the receipt book? Victor asked. Jessica's stomach tightened. He knew exactly what it contained. Then Samuel Rizzo stepped away from the wall, pulled the missing black book from inside his jacket and placed it on the table. It ends tonight, he said. Dante's gaze hardened. You betrayed me. Samuel looked ashamed. I did, but not for money. Before anyone could ask what he meant, every light in the ballroom went out. A woman screamed. Glass shattered. Dante's hand found Jessica's and pulled her close as emergency lights flickered red along the walls. Then a familiar voice came from behind them. Nobody move. Jessica turned. Kyle stood 10 feet away, holding the final transfer drive in one hand, and Dante's wounded expression told her the other object Kyle carried could change everything. The other object in Kyle's hand was not a weapon. It was a phone, its screen glowing with a 60-second countdown. At 0, Kyle said, breathing hard beneath the red emergency lights, every forged account Victor built gets uploaded to investigators with Dante Moretti's name attached. Jessica felt Dante move half a step in front of her, instinctively shielding her without pulling her away. Kyle, she said, you were never supposed to be part of their plan, were you? His eyes flicked toward Victor. That hesitation was all she needed. They used you too. Victor snapped. Don't listen to her. Jessica kept her voice steady. Raymond gave you my address. Victor gave you instructions. They made you follow me because they knew everyone would call you the creepy coworker if something went wrong. You were disposable." Kyle's grip tightened around the phone. Raymond shouted, "She's lying!" "Then why are you afraid of him hearing me?" Jessica asked. Silence struck harder than any threat. 28 seconds remained. Dante could have ordered his men forward, but he looked at Jessica instead. "Your call," he said quietly. The trust in those two words steadied her. Jessica stepped from behind him, though Dante remained close enough that his shoulder nearly touched hers. "Kyle, give me the phone." "Why would I?" "Because if that upload happens, Victor disappears, Raymond blames you, and you become the man who carried out everything they planned." Kyle looked at Victor. Victor looked toward the sealed exit. 17 seconds. Samuel Rizzo suddenly spoke from beside the signing table. "She's right." Dante's gaze hardened. Samuel lowered his head. "Victor threatened my daughter's medical privacy and used it to force me to give him camera access. I told myself I was protecting my family." His voice broke. "Instead, I helped him terrorize an innocent woman." Victor lunged toward the transfer drive, but Marco intercepted him before he reached the table, restraining him without unnecessary force. Raymond backed away, only to find 2 security officers blocking the exit. 9 seconds. Jessica held out her hand. "Kyle." For the first time since she had known him, he looked ashamed instead of smug. At 3 seconds, he placed the phone in her palm. Dante immediately cancelled the upload through the secure terminal connected to the ballroom system. The countdown vanished. So did Victor's confidence. By sunrise, independent auditors had secured the restaurant records, the receipt book, Jessica's notebook, security footage from her apartment building, and the financial files Victor had tried to manipulate. Raymond and Victor were removed from their positions while authorities reviewed the evidence. Kyle admitted what he had done and agreed to cooperate, but Jessica did not forgive him just because he finally told the truth. She simply looked at him and said, "You don't get access to my life anymore." Then she walked away. That mattered. 2 days later, Jessica stood outside apartment 12C holding a new lock key provided by building management. Dante waited across the hall, giving her space. "You could move somewhere else," he said. Jessica looked through her doorway at the little apartment she had fought so hard to afford. Morning sunlight spilled across the floor. "No, I chose this place before they made me afraid of it. I'm keeping it." Dante's expression softened. "Good." She smiled. "You say that a lot when I disagree with you." Amlerni held out something small, the repaired picture frame that had fallen from her box the first night they met. Inside was a photograph of Jessica with her late grandmother, the woman who had once told her never to shrink herself just to make cruel people comfortable. Jessica's eyes filled. "You fixed it?" "The frame was broken," Dante said. "Not the picture." She looked at him, understanding the words he had not said. For years, people had treated Jessica as though her body, her kindness, or her working-class life made her easier to dismiss. Dante never asked her to become thinner, quieter, richer, or different. He had protected her dignity before he ever asked for her trust. "I don't need someone to rescue me," she whispered. "I know." Dante stepped closer. "That's why I respect you." "And what do you need?" For once, the feared Mafia boss had no immediate answer. Then he offered his hand instead of taking hers. "Maybe someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm wrong." Jessica laughed softly and placed her hand in his. Months later, she left the restaurant and helped manage a small neighborhood cafe where employees were treated with respect and harassment was never dismissed as a joke. Dante remained feared by his enemies and fiercely controlled in his world, but around Jessica, people noticed something impossible. He listened. And Jessica no longer entered rooms wondering whether she deserved to take up space. She knew she did. The woman who had moved 12 miles just to feel safe had finally found something bigger than protection. A home where she was seen, respected, and loved exactly as she was. And the man who trusted power more than people had discovered that choosing one courageous woman did not make him weaker. It gave him something his empire never could. Sometimes the person everyone underestimates becomes the one person strong enough to change everything. So tell me, if you were Jessica, would you have trusted Dante after that first night? or would you have kept your distance? If this story kept you watching until the end, subscribe to the channel for more powerful Mafia Boss stories about danger, loyalty, healing, and unexpected love.